There we go. Welcome, prospective students and everybody. This is the fourth quarter, as I said. That means that all of my freshman rhetoric students are doing a great job and have learned many, many things. So all of y'all who are watching in rhetoric class, not you prospective students, but everybody else, please do turn on your cameras so I can see you all. And that way we'll all feel like we're together, even though we're apart by ourselves. Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you're together, that's great. That's totally fine. Today, for this first section, we'll be doing Group A presentations. And just I'll recap the prompt. Today, students are giving a memorized, that means no notes, book review to a hostile audience of either a book that should be read and is not, or a book that should not be read in 125 to 175 words. And you're supposed to be giving this to a hostile audience. A hostile audience doesn't mean someone who hates you, but it means someone who disagrees with you, for starters. So that means that you're not preaching to the choir. You're not picking a topic, or the students won't be describing books that everyone already loves and saying, read these. Neither should they be picking books that everybody already hates and saying, don't read those. Okay? So the goal for you prospective students would be kind of to evaluate and see, do the students make you want to add these books to your Goodreads to read list? Or on the other hand, if they're doing a negative one, do they make you want to take them off? And with that said, I think we're going to get started here. So remember, all of you Group C people who are watching, let me go ahead and share our screen. I want to show you guys what you all should be doing. Okay, so you Group C people, you'll see Populi is right there. If you click on the Lessons tab, you can then see we're in week 2. Click on week 2, and you can get in here to Group A feedback. You should be clicking into Group A feedback, and you can see the students here that we're going to be critiquing together. So with those students, Elizabeth Adams, you'll be going first, lucky you. And then at the end of this, all you Group C people, right? All you Group C people, be writing down your comments, typing with your fingers as you go. And at the end of the day, you should have a comment, a substantive comment, either a positive critique or a negative critique that you can then upload to contribute to this discussion for each person. Does that make sense for everybody? I want to make sure it does before we go. See, I'm getting a question. You are critiquing each person who's going. So all 10 people who are going should get a comment from you, Meredith, saying this is what you did well or this is what you did poorly. And at the end, you'll upload your little document with all of that. There you go. It's going to be very fun. Okay.
Wait, so Mr. Kohl, is it just one document with all of the comments in it that we're uploading, or do we upload a different one for each person?
I would upload just one document, and you can do that at the end. Okay. Rather than 10 uploads. That changed a little bit, but thank you. Good question. Oh yeah, and good point. Due to our current coronavirus excitement, Dr. Schlecht has had to bow out of declamations today. I don't know if you just saw that Idaho has officially asked everybody to shelter at home except for emergency services, so I'm sure you'll be hearing more about that soon. And that reminded me, I did want to go ahead and pray before we began class. So let's pray and then we'll get started. Heavenly Father, we come before you today so thankful that we have a chance to meet together, even though we cannot meet in person. We ask that you continue to keep our country and the world in mind. We ask that we know you keep us safe every day, so please continue to do that. Grant my students the ability to do a great job presenting, and we look forward to that today. We look to glorify you even in something like rhetoric class on a Wednesday afternoon. Thank you. We are thankful even in the midst of the trial, and in Jesus' name we pray, amen. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself till Elizabeth's presentation and go ahead and get started.
Mr. Kohl, real quick
for Maggie.
If we are to like forget what we're saying or something, would you rather us just like it would be on stage if we forgot, or are we supposed to look at our speech?
Oh yeah, good question. I want you to put your speech away. So you are floundering and alone in this broad world. And if you forget, you forget. That's going to be embarrassing because there's a lot of people watching. Just kidding. I don't want to add any more pressure to y'all. Yes, and please do ask Mr. Rush if you got question, you virtual visiting students. Go ahead and you can text him. You can shoot him a message privately. And of course, you don't want to harass people too much, but you feel free to give a applause as we go. Okay, let's get started, Elizabeth. Thank you. Are we there, Elizabeth?
Yes, I'm here. Bones crack as you land on a twisted ankle. Pain hurts, but pain is not our enemy. The Gift of Pain is a book written by a surgeon. So when you're about to read it, don't have lunch at the same time. Dissecting human cadavers is on the menu. But don't worry, Dr. Brand, the surgeon, is not about to stay confined within sterile hospital walls. He grew up in India. Go to the Kali Malai, the mountains of death. Scoot in close to leprosy patients, the untouchables, the ones with the claw-like hands. Go to an autopsy performed in a disease-ridden shack at midnight with a kerosene lamp. And when you get home, be grateful that you have a working nervous system. Your fingers and toes are not being chewed off in the night by rats, and you know when to stop walking on a twisted ankle. Pain is a gift, and if you read this book, it will become more of a friend than ever. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, the quiet clap. Thank you. And the way we do rhetoric declamations then would be now I get to tell her what she did well and what she did poorly. Yes, good work. You can feel free to shoot her claps or well dones in the comments there. Okay, so again, Elizabeth, just starting off with your memorization. That's, of course, the first hurdle. I've got your piece pulled up here so we can write some comments on it as we go here. But yeah, the Gift of Pain, I thought you did a great job with specific, shall we say, the moments of uncomfortableness that you want us to feel. And if we're looking at the broad skill here, the skill of, hey, do we add this to our Goodreads list? I think you did a good work with that. So I think a couple things that you began with that idea of the bones cracking as you land on a twisted foot, which was a nice moment. But then you return to it at the end and talk about how not to stop walking on that twisted ankle. That felt like a bit of an inside joke. So there's a balancing act that you all want to do when you're giving a presentation of a book that you are trying to get someone to listen to. You want to go ahead and both give a hint that you know well enough how this book is great and that we want to come with you and learn it as well, but you don't want to hide too much from us. So that's the only instance with that ankle cracking where I felt like there was a story that I wasn't quite getting the picture of. And if it's a story about how someone walked on a broken ankle for far too long, that's something you could make extremely excruciating as opposed to what I thought it was, which is just kind of a fun description of a painful moment. All right.
Okay, so the thing was with the discovery about leprosy that they discovered that it's nerve damage, and so you can't feel that your ankle is broken.
There you go. Okay. I see. I was missing that a little bit. Looking back through your prose here, when you get home from India, I like that phrase. I thought you had some nice phrases as well, occasionally a bit prosy. So that's the other thing we're looking for. No, you guys don't need to follow along with their paper, right? So you're just writing your comments down. At first, I thought you'd be able to see her assignment, but you aren't. So you'll just have to listen. Good. Okay. One other note before we release Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I want to see, we spent a while last week talking about the elements of elocution, right? And one, you had this sort of fascinated excitement with the macabre, which was fun. So you liked the bones popping, you liked the rats chewing things that shouldn't be chewed. We all enjoyed that with you, but I also think you could have added an element of disgust and a little bit of horror to parts of your delivery, and it would have come across that much stronger. So if you're looking at variation there, I think that would be your variation of the quality, right? So you'd want to have an element of that disgust and sort of temper that sort of chirpy, because you have a very chirpy delivery style, which I like. It's full of energy. But that chirpiness can also be tempered with disgust and that sense of, so then at the end, when you go through that nice list of uncomfortable things, we feel uncomfortable with you. Any last things, Elizabeth?
I'll just say the memorization was recent, and that's why the delivery was a little more flat.
Yep, good. That's why this term, it's putting it all together. So you'll notice in previous terms, I would have you just memorize something and not worry about other things. But in this term, you have to both memorize and deliver, put it all together. But well done. I only noticed, I think, 1 or 2 memory moments where you thought, uh-oh, she's searching for the next phrase. But I'm looking forward to see how the rest of you all do. Okay, so next up, Becca Baker. And of course, you group C people who are watching, you all should be writing a note down. You should have your note done for Elizabeth Adams. Substantive criticism, not just I liked it or I didn't like it. Okay?
Good. Is there feedback? Okay. There are few things in life worth truly loathing. Among this small collection, acne, lactose intolerance, and a lovely little book entitled Exploring Creation with Chemistry from the much beloved company Apologia. Flip through its tear-stained pages containing the great void of existential suffering. Now, granted, it's a textbook. It's not here to entertain, merely to inform. And yet, when you put this book down, you will not be one scrap smarter than you were when you first had the misfortune of opening its pages. Even worse, the excessive wordiness and pathetic attempts at memorable pose will sap your mental energy and leave you confused, exhausted, and questioning the merits of middle grade education. You may read each line, each paragraph, each page 4 or 5 different times. Not because the information was so riveting and relevant, but because your brain gave up halfway through and refused to register a single thing after that. This book is about as meaningful as the serving size on an ice cream container. So, I implore you, when choosing a curriculum for your budding students, stay away from this literary abomination. Thank you.
The one thing I don't like about Zoom is the silent applause. As much as I try to make you all keep it all there. Yeah, good stuff. You can feel free to drop a comment in the chat. I feel like that'll make us feel like she didn't just drop a pebble over the side of an ocean liner and we'll never hear from it again. Yeah, okay. So the one issue just at first, does anybody like reading chemistry textbooks? So I feel like that might be a little bit of preaching to the choir, but at the same time, because we're all assuming, hey, it's a chemistry book, we're gonna hate it. But there may be a few among you who like, oh, okay, we have a few of us. Yeah, sure. If you have a comment, no, I don't want you to unmute and clap. That's gonna be awful. We'll do fully digital. Bad idea, Josh. Bad idea. But yes, I thought that as far as your reasons, the actual substance for disliking this chemistry book, did she really, I mean, this is a question for everybody. Did she really get into many of the actual reasons for why this chemistry book does a bad job? I mean, not really. I mean, what was this? If we're breaking this down into ethos, pathos, and logos, what are the 2 categories she's doing this with? I guess since we're together, we can do that a little more. Right. It's dull. It's a critique. Oh, Victoria says it's a critique of your study habits. No, it's just pathos. I think the tear-stained pages was perhaps my favorite line through the whole thing here. Yeah, it's a full emotion. This is all pathos, right? She's just saying it's miserable. We don't like it. You don't want to read it. And if that's the standard, yeah, I definitely don't want to go add a chemistry book to the pages. Having taught from Apologia, we could get into some specifics, but we probably don't need to right now. Okay, so looking at this here, I thought your delivery was very strong. I had almost no moments where I noticed that you had something where, well, hold on, let me go ahead and pull this open here. I didn't notice any minutes where you struggled, and in fact, I even noticed some places where you made changes that worked very well. Here, let's show this. So let's go ahead and open up Becca's assignment here. Notice she spelled declamation wrong, right? So we can go ahead and make fun of Becca for that. Make sure that shows up in her comments. She was really hoping that no one would get a chance to see this, but hey, that's what I'm here for. Okay, load. Okay, let's see, there we are. There are few things in life truly worth loathing. I thought that's a fun opening. She gets into this: acne, lactose intolerance, and chemistry textbooks. That's a pretty fun first gaff, right? As you might expect, I don't know if you all can see this too well, but as you might expect, let's zoom in a little. As you might expect with Becca, she gets a little bit too wordy in a couple of these things. I think stuff like a lovely little book, she could have gone ahead and, let me go ahead and write on this. You know, a lovely little book. Well, I'm not going to write on it right now because it's going to pop up in front. You know, you want to cut your joke down and make it really punch. I think it's Tear-Stained Pages is a fantastic little thing. Really enjoyed Tear-Stained Pages. And then as we go, I think the excessive wordiness and pathetic attempts at memorable prose. These are both examples of telling and not showing, right, Becca? Because I'm not able to see what a pathetic attempt at memorable prose is. Whereas, for example, if you pick something like Dan Brown and his novel style where he's writing terrible, terrible descriptions of things, that would be a way where we can see that it's a pathetic attempt at memorable prose, right? As opposed to just hearing from you. So at your chance here, I would say that generally what you'd go for, you did a good job at telling me about it, but I want to see the content. I want you to quote from your textbook in a way that makes us weep. I want to see some of those tear stains. But that's all said with the understanding that I really liked that presentation. It was funny and I laughed out loud in particular places here. Okay, any questions or thoughts, Becca?
I did, in the original version, there was a quote from the actual textbook that just showed it dragging on, and it crammed like a sentence worth of information in 4 or 5 sentences. But then that ruined my word count, and I was like, I can have 2 sentences and then this thing, or I can just try to, so
Yeah.
that's partly why. So I just tried to make that part even more wordy than I normally do, so it just makes it, that part drag, is what I was kind of going for.
Yeah, and what you have to decide is that it's not worth compromising and that you have to make it perfect. And so you have to fit the quote in along with all the jokes that you wanted. Otherwise, though, I mean, I understand these are nitpicky critiques, as we always say, in the midst of a very good presentation. So I like that. Okay, thanks, Becca. Let's see if anybody else, Meredith, yeah, her delivery was really good. If you do want to drop a comment in chat, that's fine. I mean, we're all virtual together, so rather than shouting boo at this stage, you can go ahead and drop it directly into chat. Or yay. I don't know why I picked boo. Definitely yay as well. Okay, so Meg, you are next in our wonderful lineup.
Okay, is my audio working? Good, okay. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. This is the central conflict of Shusaku Endo's book, Silence. Can our actions really contradict the state of our heart? What if your verbal apostasy supposedly saves the lives of persecuted Christians? Can we ever profane the name of Christ and expect fruit to follow? In professing the name of Christ, we profess his sovereignty over every moment of suffering, every word we speak, and every step we take. we profess capital T truth. And we confess hard answers to even harder questions. Naturally, Endo doesn't surmise to answer such questions, and quite frankly, we wouldn't really want him to. However, he doesn't allow for answers, and there we must disagree. Silence is a book which brings your heart into sympathetic anguish while arguing that God himself is too small to reconcile that anguish to glory. Yes, it is a book about missionaries. Yes, it is a book about the horrendous truth of missionary life and death. But it is a book that rejects truth in the very premise of it, and that is no story which we can submerge ourselves in. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. First off, on your delivery, very earnest, right? Very earnest, sort of logos-centric. What can we agree with? What can we disagree with? Right? So looking through your paper right here in front of me here, you want to say, you start with a bit of you're trying to make a bit of a confusing distinction, right? So you're trying to say, or I'm not saying, I guess I shouldn't say it's confusing. You're making an important distinction here. Can we answer that every step we take really confesses Christ? Or are there certain things we can say that seem wrong on the surface that actually do right? And your answer is kind of that, yes, there's an answer to that question, but Shusaku Endo does not answer it, or doesn't allow there to be an answer. He wants to just make a description about it. And I think for this book, or for this book review, you focus on an important element of the book to say that we shouldn't read it. But I think for anybody who hadn't heard of this book before, we need a few more details to ground us in the moment. So for those of us who know that it's Jesuits who are tortured by the Japanese in the 1800s, you know, that kind of situation, that little bit of setting I think is probably important. I like that you didn't feel the need to run through the whole thing itself, but I think getting right at the heart of it, the sort of discussion about whether apostasy really matters is the place that you wanted to go. You use the word apostasy, but I think a little more, especially as we're listening and not necessarily looking at it, a little more emphasis on the word apostasy should be good. So I guess that's my main critique of this. I like what you did, like the earnestness of your delivery, the force that you delivered. You did well with force, as we would expect from you. But I want a little more focus and fine tuning on, well, what are you saying about apostasy? You know, what's Endo's problem? Is that he says someone can still glorify Christ through apostasy in this kind of weird way, or is he not saying that? So any thoughts on that, Meredith? Sorry, you probably just turned off your mic.
Let's see. I think my biggest problem with the book was like it pinpointed a very specific issue that I think is a really true kind of tension, I guess. But the fact that throughout the whole book and then all the way through to the end of the book, he sets it up in such a way as to say, and there is no way that you can be a Christian and apostatize or be a true Christian and let these people suffer because you won't just say that you don't believe. And so it's like, obviously there's no simple answer to that question. I'm not going to try to answer it in 175 words, and he's not going to try to answer it in his book, which is good because I don't think he could answer it in a way that's sufficient. But the fact that he says, can't be done, God's too small, Christianity doesn't work here, that's my problem with the book.
Gotcha. Good. And I think I like that part about God himself is too small to reconcile this. I thought that's a very strong line and a damning critique. And I use that word, of course, intentionally there. A book against truth in the very name of it. It is no story about to submerge ourselves. It's a book against truth in the very name of it. I guess I'm not sure what so I wanted a little more punch on that conclusion, like what you just gave me there. So I like the way you phrase that, and I do like that phrase there. And I do like that you're trying to avoid the simple answer, because it is a novel, right? So it's supposed to be complicated to some extent. Well done, Meg. Anything else? Not so much. Okay, good. Next up, Lucy Deacon.
Okay. Don't judge a book by its cover. I was 9, my imagination dry, and nothing was jumping out of the bookshelves. I thirst for other people, plots, places, but here sat a large, plastic-looking book, pale red. Not even red. With a picture that looked like it came from a blurry, barely coloured 1950s movie. The Red Keep. My 9-year-old self cringed. Who wants a story about a building? My friends, you would pass by this book, but in doing so, you would miss the gem that fired my imagination, that granted me a love of reading, and that taught me a valuable lesson. It's Burgundy, France, 1165, the time of raids and rescues, of daring plots and secret passages. Woven into this background are some excellent characters. They're not your modern, inhumane superheroes with unrealistic combat techniques, but rather their strength lies in courage and determination, alongside their bows and arrows and swords. Read this book for its concepts of truth, justice, loyalty, and love. Read it for its page-turning storyline. Read it to rekindle your love of fiction. At first, I judged it by its cover. Don't make the same mistake. Read it.
Very well done. Okay, so we all enjoy a British accent. I think in these dark times as much as any other time as well. So thank you, Lucy. One comment about your delivery though is going to be about your eye contact. Okay, so when you watch, if I look above the camera, and you can tell that I'm looking above the camera, especially for a webcam, that's going to be something that's actually going to feel a bit eerie, because you're going to want me to, instead of looking past you, to look at you, right? And so when you're doing that delivery, even at a webcam, keep that eye straight on the screen, and if you look above it, it's actually going to come across as avoiding that eye contact right there. As far as your takeaway, the logos that you want us to have here, I think this was very strong with the don't judge a book by its cover, right? Especially for an audio audience, or I should say oral, we're listening, right? We're not watching. So a takeaway like that you return to twice is very helpful for us. Where your piece started to the first paragraph was fantastic, but where it started to get weak was, I think where you started to say it's not really a marvel, there's no inhumane super fighters, right? Which is an interesting phrase. I suppose did you coin the phrase super fighter yourself? You might have said it differently. I'm just looking at it. But we don't read books for concepts. So read it for its concepts of truth, justice, loyalty, and love. I'm not sure that the generalizing move. So you went up to the abstract realm, the realm of Plato's laws. I'm not sure that's really the place that you want to take us. I think you want to get into, I know it's Burgundy, France. I know it's in the 1100s, but I want to get, do we have a knight and a damsel? Because if we have a knight and a damsel, I almost want to know their names. And then I read it for its page-turning storyline. Those are all cliches there. So really, really well done. Loved it. I just want a few hints that kind of give me a bit of a flavor for what this story is like. But overall, your organizing principle that move you from don't judge a book by its cover, really good. And then, of course, does anybody know what Lucy did wrong at the very end?
She said, read this book.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Abby. She said, read the book. So I think this might be worth just taking a look at here. You might say, what's wrong with saying, oops, hold on, let me share that. You might say, what's wrong with saying, read the book? Well, nothing, right? Except when you do such a good job getting us to the point where we want to read the book, and then you say, read the book, right? So at first I judged the book by its cover. Don't make the same mistake. Cut. just done right there. Don't make the same mistake. We were all with you. And then as soon as you say read it, you know, it's just kind of like, well, yeah, we know we're supposed to read it. That's what we're here for. And it's not a terrible mistake. It's not something that's going to ruin your presentation, but do keep in mind, you've done such a good job getting us there. It's that moment of, okay, so in the terrible movie that is one of the Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Where he comes sailing in on the ship and the ship is sinking and sinking and he steps off right onto the dock. That's what your declamations are, right? You want to step off right at the moment when you're there, right? And so if you wait a second too long, it's like you have to jump a little bit to get off. So just a slight hitch. Again, very tiny point, but great job overall. Anything you want to say, Lucy?
Question, Mr. Kohl.
Oh, go for it.
So I feel like what you said about eye contact with looking above the computer, as far as in person and making speeches, I would almost stretch to say that, at least for me, even the trick of looking above people's heads and just beyond them instead of looking at them makes me feel the same way you're saying, that it has the same effect as if you're looking above the computer screen, because I feel like I can always tell when people aren't looking at me. Right. So what do you think about that?
Well, did you feel like, this is an honest question, did you feel like Lucy's eye contact was weird here?
Yeah.
Okay. When someone, I guess, the way you can tell that if someone is looking at you but looking above you in an audience, sure, that's awkward. But there's a way to do it with looking right here, where it's hard to tell if you're going quick enough. So if people are slowly looking at everybody and looking at here instead of in their eyes, then yeah, you're totally right. But if you're quickly looking right here, you can't tell. Yeah. So that's what my point would be.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other comments here? I thought as far as structure goes, Lucy's really good, right? That thing here. Next up is Griffin Ennis.
All right, you hear me right? Good? All right. What do free trade coffee, liberal arts degrees, and knowing what's best for poor people all have in common? All white people love them. Christian Lander's book, Stuff White People Like, is just that, a list of stuff white people like. It explains all 150 things that float the Caucasian boat. Plaid shirts, Apple products, and having black friends are among the more common examples. But what is the value of such a book? When we look a little bit deeper, we see a clear example of Horatian satire by pointing out the quirks of modern American white culture. Lander is exposing the cracks in the wall through jovial jabs. He demonstrates that cultural commentary through He demonstrates that cultural commentary with a grin is often the most effective. So before you go back out into the world, use this guide to help understand the white person in your life. Thank you.
Okay. Watch my criticism, my commentary, my cultural commentary with a grin. Yes, I have, as many have said, yeah, the sort of Tai Lopez approach where you're giving us the selfie vlog here I don't know. I don't know if that's the move, Griffin. I think I
think it was the only move, because if I had tried to do this on my laptop, it wouldn't have worked. I guess it was not because I wanted to, is because that my phone is more powerful, like running Zoom, than my laptop, if that makes sense.
Did you?
So I just thought it would have cut in and out like that every time I try to watch a lecture on there. It just doesn't work. So that's the best I could come up with.
Putting your phone down doesn't work?
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. You can take the phone out of your hand. I mean, I understand that's a white person thing too. You want to have the phone in your hand, but you can, put it down and then it might hold still.
Yeah.
Okay. Good stuff. Let's get into the specific contents about this. So your basic justification for this is that it's satire and that it's exposing cracks in the wall jovially, right? With some humor here. But I mean, I guess you never really get into the idea of what is a crack in the wall, right? So I'm trying to understand. I mean, sure, all of us liking plaid shirts and Apple products might be slightly humorous, I guess. But I'm not sure what's the point of this satire, because it sounds to me like it's more just like about making fun because white people all are the same. So I guess your justification here isn't making sense to me. I mean, everybody's seen these kind of memes in the book going around, so I admit that it's funny. But I think trying to make it, I like that you tried to make it more than funny. I'm just not buying what you're saying. I'm not buying that this is exposing cracks in the wall. I guess for
So
example,
just more specific examples is what you're saying, basically.
yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just not
Okay.
buying. I'm just not buying the fact that what makes white people or stuff like white people like good is beyond anything other than that it's kind of funny.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, I guess so here, but I like the bit of irony here to understand the white person in your life as speaking as a white person. But I also am wondering, this isn't really about understanding. This is much more about, I guess, crowd psychology, or what happens when birds of a feather flock together. So as far as that goes, yeah, funny book. We got a few elements of funny, but I wanted a little more substance. Sorry, they're moving. A lot of sound outside. I hope you guys can't hear that. Any thoughts, Griffin? It's fine if not. How about anybody else? Any comments you want to share? Okay, let's move on to our next one then. We are on to Caleb Good.
There we go. Sorry about that. Experiencing a few technical difficulties. There we go. Okay. Sorry. On the Origin of Species, Charles Darwin, 1859, The Bible of Evolutionism, and you, as a Christian, should read it. In it, Darwin outlines a hypothesis of how all the creatures might have come about. He shows how the biology and geology that his time understood could support that hypothesis. And looking into the future, determines what else would need to be discovered about adaptation in order for his ideas to continue to hold water, at least under the scientific method. For example, when talking specifically about the eyes, he states in chapter 5 of Species that if my timeline of the eye's evolution proves inconsistent with any later discovered data, then my whole idea, indeed all of evolution itself, must needs be scrapped in the name of science. He assumed, wrongly, that science would find the facts that would support him, but science didn't even nearly come through. It told us that he was wrong about the eyes, and it told us he was wrong about everything else. Darwin himself wrote the best refutation of modern evolution. On the Origin of Species shows us how evolutionists have warped their theory continuously in reaction to true science's assaults. And a quick read of this, their favorite proclaimed book, will show that in their effort to save it, they have destroyed the very foundation of what they claim to believe. Thank you.
Well done, Caleb. Okay, I think Caleb had a couple very strong ad libs that I kind of wanted to show you. Let me share that screen. Okay, it's Lucy's. And this is important because it says something about when you're understanding or when you're speaking to an audience about what you want to kind of add, right? So Caleb realizes he was going along. He assumed science would find that the facts would support him, but science didn't even nearly came through that he was wrong about the eyes and about everything else. And then he added, oh man, now I'm forgetting exactly what he said, but he added a moment that brought it back to the book, okay, to kind of say, and specifically showed us that it's destroyed the very foundation of what they believe, and that specifically is Darwin's
Yeah, I said that Darwin wrote the best refutation of modern evolutionism.
There we go. That's the line you added. And I think you really needed that because before that, it kind of came away as a bit abstract. So, but adding in this paragraph, Darwin himself wrote the best refutation or wrote of modern evolutionism. That's the reason you all need to read it. Your argument here is pretty simple. I like that it's a bit of a turn. It's the Bible of evolutionism. You should read it. That's a nice turn. Okay. You misspelled origin. So misspelling origin of species, yeah, it doesn't matter, but on audio, but since I can share it with everybody now, it matters. But of course, I guess in your favor here, you did misspell it like the ancient theologian. So I feel like maybe there you have a little bit of a skate of something that'll get you out of it there. Yep.
I have Dr. Herman to thank for that in a presentation on origin and his theory of the atonement. So my bad.
Yep, origin theory of the atonement versus origins of evolution. They're spelled differently, but they're both equally exciting, at least if we can trust Caleb. Okay, other than that, Caleb, well delivered. I would say, again, you had a few issues with eye contact, and especially on a webcam. These are little webcam techniques that you won't have to worry about too much, but you want to generally keep your hand away from your face because it comes across as especially nervous, right? So when I'm up here like this, just kind of messing around, feels extremely nervous. So especially because my hand is now bigger in the webcam than my entire head. So you want to, watch out for hands and webcams. Yeah, so stay away from the face. And then also you have a very earnest style, but because of where you were looking on your screen, keep in mind where your camera is so that you can look like you're talking directly to us. I understand I'm not doing it exactly the same, but I felt a few times you're straying away right when you needed to be really earnest. But that's just webcam stuff. Otherwise, very well done. Thought you had a good idea. I wanted a few more specifics about how the eye couldn't possibly have evolved over time because we had to take your word for it. I understand word count is tight, but that's the one moment where, again, I'd like specifics. But you guys are doing really well. I'm really enjoying this right now. Good job. Any comments? Okay. Next up, we've got Vegas Harmon himself. Caleb has blamed your dad for a typo. We'll see how we'll see how Vegas does as having come from that typo causer.
Let me just set this up for a second. I want to stand, so.
Okay. Oh, exciting.
Even have a little fake podium, so it's fun. All right. My guess is that most of you don't have math textbooks on your reading lists. Most people tend to think of math as cerebral, disconnected from the real world, not something you'd read about for fun. This is nonsense. In his book, Mathematics, A Human Endeavor, Harold Jacobs addresses this nonsense at its root, how math is taught. Rather than presenting a series of seemingly unrelated techniques, Jacob portrays math as an interconnected whole, something you can appreciate, not just as a means to an end, but like you would a Rene or a Degas. He treats it as a liberal art. The text is witty, incorporating bits of history, illustrations, and perhaps most importantly, comics. And nowhere in the book does anybody ring up 50 watermelons while calculating the velocity of a train going due east at 3:15 p.m. on a Friday, either. Anybody can read this book, and everybody should. Whether you ace calculus or failed algebra, there's something to gain. At the least, you'll get some fun math to read.
Okay. Well done, Vegas. Thank you. So the move of the podium. I don't know. I guess I kind of liked it. What did you guys think about it? It's a very Vegas move for sure. I
Felt
think
more normal.
you felt it was more normal.
More like we're used to, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
I mostly appreciated how very excited he was about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Enthusiasm is infectious, and if you can get any enthusiasm to transfer through a webcam, you're doing a good thing already. Oh, wow. Did you guys see that proper technique for coughing? Well done. Well done, Vegas. Right in the crook of the elbow. The poster child. I mostly just, I think it was a fun move. I think it actually provided some distance from him, which normally I would say is a bad thing. I would like you guys to get right up in our faces and feel like you can't get out of it, especially because of webcam, there's already distance. So you want, moving even further back. If I can just emphasize, if I move even further back to where my headphones are popping out, right, it feels like a little more distant, perhaps a bit more formal. And so Vegas likes the formal. He tends to thrive where it's slightly more formal. So I can see the move being there, but it is interesting to notice. Yeah, definitely, Elise. It's more like a stage.
Would it be better if I came a bit closer with this? Maybe.
I think so. I mean, I think the best part is, and this is hard to do because you're watching it, but is if you didn't have to set it up, right? Because that moment of sort of setting it up and moving backwards actually means we lose a bit of that in front up energy right there. I also wondered what was in your aquarium.
It's a tarantula.
Okay. Wow. All right. Math and tarantulas. We're getting the vibe of Vegas. We like it. Any comments for Vegas?
I have one. I think that something that's really hard to do is to deliver a speech to people who are not interested in what you're talking about. And so I think that if you can get up and you can talk about math to people and be like, hey, no, really, you should read this book, and maybe not fully convince them, because I'm not going to go read that textbook now, but to spark my interest and make me feel like I want to listen to the speech, even though it's about math, is a really great talent to have, and I think that Vegas has it. So good job.
Okay, but you said you weren't going to read it. So
but it was still a good speech.
So he has a little bit of the talent, but not enough to actually make anybody read it. Yeah, see, that's the talent. That's the challenge, right? Is if you're picking something hard like math, you got to make us want to add it to the Goodreads. Yeah, it is tricky. It's a nice move. I like it. It's a good move. Okay, Meredith says she would add it. Do you remember the title? That's what I'm curious about. As far as like the practical takeaways, I don't remember the title. And I wish that I did, because that's a bit of the takeaway, right? So that is something. If I feel like if you could emphasize the title of your book in such a way that we'll come away remembering it. I remember Elizabeth's The Gift of Pain because it's stuck in my head. I remember The Red Keep because Lucy made red such a big part. I would like if you could emphasize it so we actually come away with it a little bit more. So those are, Vegas, those aren't so much critiques of you. I thought you did well. You had one moment of a hitch in delivery. And then I need you to upload your assignment so I can see it.
I thought it did upload it. Is it not there?
It didn't show up. So try again.
Okay.
It's not a big deal, but try again and we'll get it up there. Yeah. Any comments, Vegas? Awesome.
Nope.
Nope. Perfect. Good job. I liked it.
Thank you.
Almost made us feel like we were back at home in the new art. So I appreciate that. All right, Belle, you're up.
Now that we've all been sitting inside for a week and a half, deprived of bootsers, tea time, and all the forms of free food we usually get, you might be getting desperate for things to do. Well, I have a solution. And while I do truly love these books, I'm only suggesting them to you in hopes that you're desperate enough to actually try them and give them a fair shot. Why might these be a put-off to some people, you may ask? Well, because they fall under the genre of Regency romance novels. And a better way of describing these to an audience such as you all might be to say Georgia Ayres' writing is like a combination of Jane Austen and P.G. Wodehouse, and surely you like one of those, at least. With the simple but excellent plots of Wodehouse, the characters and time period of Jane Austen, and the undoubtedly amazing humor and writing of both, these books are so much better than the gas station romance novels you're probably envisioning.
Nice. Okay, well done. As I was listening, this is fun. So as you're listening, you hear her walking up so carefully to the topic that you start to wonder what's wrong with this book that she's about to recommend, right? And this is a bit tricky because, yeah, it's Georgette. You spelled it a couple different ways.
It auto-corrected on the title of the first one I submitted, and then I felt like that was awkward to spell it wrong, so I resubmitted one spelled the right way.
Gotcha. All right. Well, there you go. So romance novel. I like the move. I like the move here, the combination of Wodehouse and Jane Austen. So I'm definitely intrigued, but I would need you to, I think you made me remember it. I like that you say, I hope you're desperate enough with the current situation. Great grounding in the current moment here. Your development was well done, but you left yourself almost no time to actually sell the comparison to Wodehouse and Austen, right? Because those are big, like that's the biggest that you could do for a Regency romance, which surprisingly or not, as a publisher, I've done some research into those. So yeah, anyways, enough there. We'll speak about it another time. Yeah, the excellent, you say stuff like plots of Wodehouse, time period and characters of Austen, excellent writing and humor of both, right? So much more than the gas station novels you're undoubtedly envisioning. Yep. Okay, that's good. I would like some specifics though, so I could really take it home and make it work, right? So as a Regency romance, I don't know. I liked the challenge. It was pretty fun. Cookbooks. Nice. All right, any other comments for Belle?
Did you not mention a specific title?
Nope. No
Yeah,
specific titles.
Just an author.
Yep. Apparently it doesn't matter which one you pick up. Good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We sound like we're getting some interested people. So Belle, I feel like you've done your job. There may be some desperation out there. Okay. All right. Some people like the comparison here. Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. Up onto our next one here, Jason Pfaff.
Well, speaking of Jane Austen, it's not often that I dislike a classic of modern literature, and I'm sorry to say that Emma by Jane Austen is just an unbearable experience. I respect Jane Austen as a writer. She's terrific, and the story is good. I'm not going to knock the story either. But this was just a book that you shouldn't read. And I'll tell you why. Now, Emma is a precocious, snobby young lady who fancies herself a matchmaker, but she herself doesn't want to get married. Now, of course, she ends up falling for the only guy who's going to be able to call her out on her nonsense. And so everybody is all married in the end, and they all live happily ever after. Pretty good story. It's about how spouses can check one another's vices and balance them out. But it's just not, the characters just spoil this book. Now, Emma and every other character in the entire book is just an insufferable and unlikable person, every single one of them. Now, this is the type of unlikable that it's really hard to describe, especially in 175 words. It's not the kind of unlikable that spices up the story at all. It's the kind of unlikable that just seeps through every page of the book and just makes it absolutely no fun to read. Nothing is there to dilute the awfulness of the characters, and so it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Now, what you're going to get out of this book is not worth putting up with the characters for almost 500 pages. I'd say skip this one, stick to Pride and Prejudice. Thank you.
Okay, fun moment coming right after bells. All right, this is kind of classic Jason, right? Because he ad-libbed it incredibly, right, Jason? So you were very tight to your script for the first half, and then the second half went wild. And it made you have a very conversational style, but your content really suffered. So you had some good points in the beginning. I thought you had a great lead into it. Everybody loves hearing somebody tackle a classic and try to say that it's bad. Even people who like the classic like to hear people attack the classic, because then they can feel righteously indignant when they say, no, he's wrong, right? Everybody loves that moment. So that was a little frisson of excitement to start us off there. But then as you started to get into why you disliked it, your argument reduces to the single word, the characters were bad. And you didn't show us why. You said they're unlikable, which functionally in your description came to mean that you didn't like them, which is a subtle but important difference, right? Okay. And so as far as going through here and using words like they were awful, they spoiled it, they were unlikable, she was stuck up. I mean, there are plenty of characters where that happens, but that's not really, especially as someone who studies character, that doesn't really explain why we dislike a character. We feel like a character, yeah. So anyways, yeah, chime in.
Yeah, so I was looking for a way to try to describe how exactly all of the characters were unlikable, but I just couldn't find a way where I could fit it in like a couple of sentences. So
Yeah.
do you know how to do that?
Well, what is unlikable about them? Because
Well, there's just awful people, and there's nothing there that, I don't know, it doesn't like really add an element of like these people are awful, but then this other element is here to balance it all out, and then it all ends up with you liking everything. It's just kind of like it's unlikable, and it just goes downhill all the way through. So I'm just trying to like, I don't know, figure out how to summarize what you like or don't like about something in, I don't know, I guess that's kind of the essence of this whole prompt. So I don't know.
Yeah. So I was going to say the fact that you found yourself failing can either be for two reasons. One, it's actually something very difficult to survive or describe. Second, just that you did a bad job. You didn't do it. So I'll leave you to decide, those of you who've read Emma, whether he's accurate about it or whether he did a bad job or whether it is hard to describe. I think, Jason, for you, my advice is, especially for someone who's got a good grasp of literary stuff in literary ideas, you need to get into the specific criticism and have the vocabulary to talk about when a character is bad. So I need to hear stuff like their excitement, the call to action. I need to hear stuff about their dark night of the soul. I need to hear stuff about why they've failed. I need to hear stuff about their flaws and their weaknesses and how those have been turned into strengths. I need typical literary criticism dialogue for a character where, even if it's just along the line of, most characters have a dark night of the soul, but Emma stays in her dark night of the soul for the entire book. That alone would help us immediately. Okay, he's saying that she is miserable and she's miserable the whole way through, or she's happy and never comes down from being happy. She's stuck up. Those are ways that you get specific and capture it. And especially when you're attacking something like Austen, I feel like the characters may not be the way to attack it. Because Emma, I happen to know Emma's one of the most memorable characters in women's fiction. So I mean, in that case, I'm not sure character is the way to attack it, because her character is fantastically memorable. Everybody knows Emma. I've never read it, and I know Emma. I know stuff about her. So I think it may be more that unlike Pride and Prejudice, nobody cares about Emma. But again, you're going to have people who say, I love Emma. Emma's my favorite. So I think you're walking a fine line. I like that you tried to take a punch at a classic, but it punched back and probably broke your nose. So as far as that works, I like what you're trying to do. I just want a little more specific about your critique. Anyways, go. Any comments?
Yeah, that's just kind of ironic because it's like, yeah, everybody does remember Emma, and the reason I remember Emma as a memorable character is that I remember hating every part of that book just because of her character. So that was kind of
good.
Like what made her a memorable character for me.
Good, and I would need that. I think that's a solid move. You say, hey, in the beginning, Emma does this to her friend and never pays for it. In the middle, Emma does this to her friend and never pays for it. In the end, Emma does this to her friend and never pays for it. Like that would be the way to make us start to hate her. And I also like that moment. Rather than just saying, yeah, she's a terrible character, you went ahead and said, listen, I had to read this, and what I remember, that might be a way to go. You all remember, you probably know Emma's character. I know her too, but it's because I hated her for 500 pages. I think those kinds of things would help take it to the next level rather than come across a bit of a whitewash of a classic. Okay, any other comments?
Something kind of random, but in her letters, Jane Austen does say that she thinks a lot of people are going to hate Emma. She was like, but Emma's my favorite. I just thought.
Interesting. Hey, and that kind of more research there would be a great quote to drop in. If Jane Austen herself knows that people hate Emma, all of a sudden you win. You don't have to, if you say you don't have any more. Of course, the fact that she then says Emma's her favorite, you could leave that part out or gloss over it. We'd enjoy it. Anyways, I like it. Thank you, Jason. I would want it to be more memorized and a little more tight. Obviously, a webcam lends itself to sort of musings on a topic, but I think especially when you're going after a big target like that, you have to be precise. I want to see the scalpels out. I want to see cuts across important jugulars and arteries. Otherwise, you're just kind of going to be, causing surface damage. Okay, good. With that rather violent metaphor, let's move on to Maggie. Margaret, are you there?
Okay, I'm ready. That's not my name.
Oh, okay. Maggie, excuse me. Go.
Okay. Despite making Mr. Griffith's skin crawl and possibly lowering your opinions of me, I must speak on a series that is highly underestimated and certainly undervalued. These books taught me everything I know about Greek mythology, and these textbooks enabled me to ace the National Latin exam, and not to mention occasionally help on the ACT. Yes, I am speaking of Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series, an action fantasy novel. Through Percy's eyes, we get to see a world where the Greek gods exist. And gods exist.
Just keep going, right? Keep your comment in mind.
Through these books, I actually learned and retained far more reading them in a weekend than years of classes. But in all seriousness, these books have an uncanny ability to make seemingly unimportant details memorable. And I cannot apologize for loving what helped me pass my Latin class and what got me to this point today. And I hope that you will allow them to do this for you as well.
Okay. So Maggie, obviously you're going to in your mind be thinking, oh no, I botched it because I had a gap in the middle, but that's not how that works. When you're able to have a gap and then move past it, similarly to what we were talking about with characters, it actually makes us enjoy the presentation a little more, right? Because we're like able to say, oh wow, okay. We're all sitting here slightly bored behind our computer screens thinking, I wonder if she will not be able to finish. And then the fact that So as far as that goes, especially as a teacher, you did exactly what you needed to do, right? Which is move on to the next thing and keep going. So especially because you had such an honest, self-deprecating approach to saying, you know what, my teachers hate this and most people make fun of me, but I can't hate it. I can't hate it. It's too good. I think is a perfect intro, right? And especially coming from someone who despises Percy Jackson with all my being. I think I like that you liked it and knew why you liked it. You liked the details of classicism. You liked the fact it helped you on your tests. And those are reasons that we can't argue with. Now, whether those are enough to make us go pick up Percy Jackson on our own is another question. But at the same time, I thought that was interesting. Any comments?
I think I actually, even though you forgot and like messed up or whatever, I think that the pause was actually really nice because it kind of gave me a second to like just process everything that you were saying. So I would say
You're totally right.
Yeah, even if you were able to remember, I would say still take a few seconds between certain sentences to pause to let us just process everything. So it actually worked out pretty nice.
Also, I would say I liked the pause too because Maggie was very enthusiastic towards the beginning, and when she paused, I still felt like I still felt her enthusiasm, if that makes sense. Like it was still present there.
Good. Those are some really important things. Remember, one of our elements of elocution is that pause, right? So that's a helpful thing, is that unfortunately we're stupid, and as listeners, we really are. And 175 words, even that is too long in some sentences for us to take the main takeaways. So any way that you as a rhetor can go ahead and help us remember what the two main points of your presentation are going to be things we in fact grasp onto, like ants grasping at straws as we float in some water, right? We're gonna be like, oh yes, okay, I remember where I am right now. We're being thankful that we memorized random classical details. And then Maggie, for some reason, I don't know what's up with Populi, but similarly with Vegas's, it seemed to say that you uploaded it, but I can't see it. So if you can try to upload it again, that'd be great. Okay, guys, general comments. Way to go on your first declamation webcam, especially memorized. This is not an easy assignment. You guys have been doing prose all the way through. There's nothing really that makes that transition to straight memory easy. It's just difficult. And you'll be thinking, man, I could have delivered this better. I could have structured it better. I'll give you more specific comments when I go through and mark up your pieces. But as far as that goes, this is hard to do. You'll be doing it at least once more this term. There's a little hint. This is something that we want to keep getting good at. I appreciate you all being game to do this over webcam, and I'm highly enjoying it. I actually was thinking, and I realized that delivery over webcam is something that you all will do more than delivery from a stage in the rest of your careers. I'm almost positive, right? Isn't that weird? So we're in the 21st century now, but it's true. You guys are going to be on a webcam more than you're going to be on a stage in front of a group of hundreds of people. So in that sense, pretty fun.
Can I have a question real quick?
Yeah.
So for those of us that either you've told us that we do better kind of ad-libbing, or I guess like more Jason style,
yeah,
don't do well with like really rehearsed things and then maybe struggle with memory. For this term, things, whenever we have to memorize something, I guess for us, what's your advice?
You got to keep that outline in your brain, so that if you have to slow down and have to get to the part that you want, that you need to get to, you can immediately move in your roadmap. So that often means writing an outline or writing an outline afterward where you have key points that you can jump to. And if you get lost, you jump to those outline points. The other part, yeah, I have told you that you come across much more genuinely when you speak, just off the cuff, more of that approach. You can still do that with a memorized piece. And it just means that you're going to need to remember key phrases rather than key sentences. So a lot of times students will try to memorize an entire sentence instead of an important key phrase. As a teacher or as someone who's rehearsing an ad, I'm going to be somebody who's going to try and say something with a key phrase that I want to get out, and then I'll allow my mouth to take over and get me to that phrase. So I would say try to keep that outline in mind and then do key phrases. With that, we're all out of time. So I want to say sayonara to everybody, and make sure you upload everybody to the discussion, upload your comments, and thank you everybody. We'll be moving on to our second section of declamations for those of watchers who want to. You should have that link already. Thank you, prospective students, for visiting, and we enjoyed having you with us. Come to NSA. Even though Emma got creamed, yeah.
I just had a quick question. So how exactly did you want us to upload that?
Just a Word doc.
Okay.
Under the discussion. Just upload it. Thanks, Elise.
Oh, Mr. Kohl.
Yeah.
I've just been typing it in the little box in Populi. Is that okay, or do you still want me to?
Oh, little box is fine.
Okay. Thank you.